I came to Mines in 1957 and managed to graduate in 62.
Now, in that time, the women on Mines campus were rather limited number of ladies.
Yes.
What did that look like?
As a freshman, there were 2 of us. As a sophomore, there were 3, I believe. As a junior, there were only 2.
And then when you graduated?
There were the 2 of us, but she was 2 years behind me. We're talking about the school.
The whole school.
The school.
Not just your class, not your department, the
No,
school.
the school. And luckily, the girl that followed me 2 years later was also a petroleum engineering major. So we had summer camp together, which was really an exception to policy because it really was not open to anyone that was less than a junior going into their senior year. But Mr. Barb, who was the head of the department at that time, made an exception and allowed Juanita was her name, Juanita William, to come with me so that we could be together for summer camp, which was very nice of him.
Now, given that Mines didn't have a whole lot of female students at the time, so I'm sure that they had some areas that weren't quite ready for you. So do you have any stories around that you'd care to share?
Well, let's see. 2. One was, it was hard to find a ladies' bathroom.
I can only imagine.
If there was no secretary or office in that building, you were SOL. Okay. And the second was since this was a land grant college, everyone must take ROTC for the first and second year. So and everybody had to take PET, or physical education or physical training. And since there were no ladies' locker rooms, women were not afforded the opportunity to take either one of those courses. So we got to choose an easy A, ha ha ha, course to make up those hours. But there weren't any. No easy A courses, no underwater basket weaving, no dance class, no. Closest I came was an English literature course. Required reading of 3 books, novels, and you made an essay, you did a book report, you did not
running around in the field.
But yeah, it wasn't an easy A, I'll tell you. Anyway, those were 2 major areas that were kind of stood out as being not female friendly, shall we say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was there a lot of challenge with your peers, or was it more potentially a challenge from the professors in terms of accepting a woman in their midst?
Yes and no. The guys didn't have a whole lot in common with you. So even though they were gentlemanly, let's put it, not particularly, come on, let's go for a beer, come on, let's study for the chem quiz. No, none of that, no. And the professors were, there was a combination, but didn't really think we fit in, for the most part.
Yeah.
And they were right. This was male-oriented institution, even though it was a co-ed college. So what can I say?
But you persevered and managed to graduate.
I am very stubborn and persistent. And that's, yeah, I wanted that silver diploma. And the education that went along with it.
What did that experience and education help provide for you for the rest of your career?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Unbelievable. For the first 2 years, I did work as a petroleum engineer with the North Dakota Geological Survey in Grand Forks, North Dakota. It was such a change from Colorado, my beautiful mountains, out to the west, flat, 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 beautifully flat. Not even a fence to break it up. But it was an interesting place to work. And then I married. And my husband's in the Air Force, or was in the Air Force. He's now retired. And I found out petroleum engineering didn't really travel very well.
True.
Especially when you're going from Air Force Base to Air Force Base. And I took my education and went to work as a mechanical engineer and for the government, usually in the facilities, upkeep. They did their own design and their own that, so that was my forte. And without my education, I couldn't have done it. I'm also a registered engineer, professional engineer, and I elected to take it as a mechanical. So, you see, they taught me well.
The previous interviewee mentioned that you had 6 kids.
We did.
So I can only imagine that there were some life skills developed in trying to manage a household and a career.
True. But that was developed at Mines.
Really?
Oh. Going to school here was not all that easy. And it took all your time and left little for anything else. So managing time and effort was learned here.
Are there any stories that specifically come to mind that you'd want to share?
Well, 2 things stick out in my mind. And one of them is first day of school. We're all to report to Kul Valha, and I'm one of the last ones. I lived in, excuse me, in Denver, and I was one of the last people to arrive. But there was still this long line standing out in front of the hall. And I got in line and looked around. There were no other women. Now you got to remember, in those days, there was a women's line and a men's line. And I thought, oh my goodness, how embarrassing. I'm in the wrong line. And happened to see a fellow that I'd gone to grade school with standing up a couple of places, and I said to him, Pat, is there a girls' line somewhere? And he just laughed at me and he said, nah, this is the line.
Welcome to mine.
Welcome. I was flabbergasted, surveying. That was a required course for everybody, and it began promptly at 7 o'clock in the morning with a lecture by Professor Kelly. He was the head of the department. And his rule was everybody, he didn't take roll. But if you were absent and decided to sleep in that day, it cost you a point. Now his method of taking attendance was that each person would get a little chit. You write your name on the chit and turn it in at the end of class. Everybody had to turn in their own. You couldn't turn in your friends. And each color, the color of the chit was changed every day. So you couldn't get 2 one day and no. Okay, so he had us all figured out. Anyway, the very first day of class, I was again the last one in line, and I'd been standing in line for a little while. The bell rang at 7 o'clock. I was the next person to get the chit. He didn't give me one. And I'm standing in front of the whole class, embarrassed as I could be. So after that, I was on the front steps of Cuba Hall every morning at 7:15 when he opened the door. And I followed him in and said, "Good morning." And he said, "Good morning, Miss McGill." And I'd say, "Professor Kelly, may I have my chit?" And after that, we became friends. Instead of going crying to somebody, "Hey, he embarrassed me in front of the whole class," I was next to get my, I've been in line before the bell rang, blah, 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 blah. No.
Yep.
Better to treat it another way. But after that, he was my friend.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Are there any
You're
other
welcome.
thoughts that come to mind that you'd like to share?
I'd like to pass on the fact that I think this was the very best possible education anybody could receive at the time. And I am most grateful for that education.